Hey guys, forgive me if the audio on this one's a little weird. I think while I was recording the gameplay, I think I might have left my mic on, so you might hear some random noises. Yeah, this is Project Wingman, which is not Ace Combat, but it's very much inspired by Ace Combat. I'm using a mod to fly one of the incomplete planes. This is the F-18F. Its special weapons are kind of broken, so I chose some more normal ones, just because it's not much of a challenge using the multi-lock rocket launcher thing that the super plane gets. But I just wanted to fly around and test it out. There is the one complaint I do have about this game is that especially for two-seaters, if you want to bring Prez along, the F-14s is the best to get, and it's really not great. It reminds me actually of the F-14A from Ace Combat 5, and the D was where it's at. Although I think this is supposed to be a D, but it's definitely not that great, at least compared to the other aircraft. And I think this game suffers from the same issue Ace Combat suffers from, where basically they hit you with so many enemies and so many targets, and that kind of makes you're not really on a strike mission, you're just kind of on a survival mission, which means that an aircraft that can't maneuver but it's fast and powerful really isn't worth anything because of the fact of the amount of time you have to turn around. And the F-14, they made it kind of sticky with the way with the turning. It's a little stiff. I would say it's a lot stiff. It's a lot stiffer than at least the F-18F they had planned. So it makes it a good challenge. I know I beat it on hard with the F-14 because I did my first run with two-seaters only, just to add to the challenge. And it gets a little hairy by the end. Although I will say the Su-25 is really good. The Frogfoot it's really strong. And I would complain about the A-10 not being there, but the A-10 is not really there in Ace Combat 7, in my opinion, either, because of how weak they made it. So, I do miss the A-10. I long for its return, but the Su-25, seeing that actually added to a game like Ace Combat, which is just I don't want to say Ace Combat Light. It's Ace Combat adjacent. It definitely was cool to get a different aircraft in that sense than what we're usually used to in terms of ground attackers. But yeah, this I don't want to say this game's an experiment, but it kind of is. It's kind of basically, can an indie studio make something in the vein of Ace Combat? They don't have the licensing, they don't have the budget. The graphics aren't quite as good. I would say the main place the graphics suffer are the textures. And the skins for the aircraft are really not great. The modded skins are actually a lot cooler. And although I haven't seen a set that I really want, usually people put goofy stuff on it. The models are fine. I've got a closer look at the models. I think a lot of it just has to do with inferior, basically. I don't know what to say about it. It's not the resolution, because the resolution on the Ace Combat 7 ones aren't that great either if you get certain close-ups. But there's something about, I don't know if it's the color scheme or like the texture, and when I say the texture I mean like the look of the texture of it. Just something looks very, I don't want to say fake, but like PS2-ish kind of. Everything's really like a dirty steel kind of feel to it. It's not a huge deal. It's not a deal breaker. But definitely that's, I would say, visually where this game has its biggest problems. There's a couple texture issues in Conquest mode. Like when you fly high enough in the one mission that's, well, I don't say one mission, but one of the random generated weathers is where it's at night and you're looking up at the stars, and it's really cool until you kind of look for more than 5 seconds, and then you realize that the resolution of the, I guess, the Milky Way or whatever it's supposed to be, that kind of purple, it looks really bad. It's really low res. So there's minor things like that, like visually. And if this were a major studio, I would say, wow, that's pathetic. But it's not. It's indie, and I can forgive things like that. I think that's probably just lack of experience. And these guys, it seems like their primary focus was not the art and the look of the game, but the actual gameplay. And in that matter, I would say they absolutely nailed it, and they're experts. This franchise, Project Wingman, this is going places. It's going to give Ace Combat a run for its money, but in a friendly way. I think the better Ace Combat and Project Wingman do independently, the better games they are. I think they're going to help one another, because you're going to play one and you're going to immediately want more. And I think that's kind of, I mean, that's how I felt with this. When this came out, I bought it, and then because I wanted to back the guys who were making it, even though my computer couldn't play it at the time. And I knew I was going to get Ace Combat 7. I wasn't, as I should say, once I saw the gameplay and particularly heard the music and stuff, I realized it was at least close enough to the Ace Combat I loved, where it wasn't going to be like Assault Horizon, and I can give them a second chance, because Assault Horizon let me down, but it seems like they actually took an effort to bring it back to its roots, and but what you get in the meantime when things like Assault Horizon come out is you get games like this that are like, oh, well, if Ace Combat's not going to be Ace Combat, we might as well try to be, or I should say, deliver that Ace Combat experience that everybody loves. I do have one recommendation for the developers that is, I'm not sure how hard it would be to implement, but the ability to change the name of the aircraft would be kind of cool. Because of the fact that the aircraft are never referred to by name in-game, they can get a little clever with it, and I get it, it's like the FC-16 is the F-16C. But if you're going to do that, you might as well allow us to edit the name of it, and just change it. I'd like to call it the Falcon or something, just so I can get a little more... It's hard to see sometimes, particularly with the bright sky, particularly like F-18s and F-16s, they kind of look the same. The E and the C, you don't really see those. And it would be, if they just allowed us to rename the stuff, that would be probably just solve the problem. And that could just be a thing just in the list as you unlock them. You get to name them, whatever. The Sioux fighters, the same thing. Su-30, that aircraft is modeled except for the cockpit, and you battle against them all the time, but you can't fly it, which is another two-seater. So I don't know if they ran out of time or what their deal was. There's a number of aircraft in the development stage. I understand, like the Su-47, like that would have been cool, but they did some other stuff instead. The Su-57, that's one that's in there. But there's a couple that they have that are, I don't want to say 90% there, but they're at least 50% finished. And I guess they just didn't take it all away. They just cut them for whatever reason, the A-10 included. And I guess they called it the G-10. I know the F-22 Raptor was supposed to be in there, but it was called something else. The VX-23, that's kind of interesting. It's got a lot of funky features to it. It's kind of it's a hybrid between the F-22, the F-23, and the J-20. I would say it probably actually most resembles the J-20, which is kind of cool, because the J-20, I don't think that's appeared. No, that definitely hasn't appeared in any of the Ace Combat games. So that I also the J-10. That's another. It would be really nice to actually be able to fight against Chinese aircraft. In addition to the MiGs and the Sioux fighters, I think it's time, especially now that they've got a lot more indigenous designs. It kind of used to be the J-10, but now that they've got the all their different the J-15 and their variants of the Sioux fighters, I think they have more variants in service of the Su-27 than even the Russians do. And the Su-37, as cool as the Terminator is, it's not in service with anyone. So it's, you can cut that. Let's just say not cut that, but you can, it would be nice to see some more, I guess, different types of aircraft that aren't necessarily super aircraft or concepts or super duper air superiority fighters. Sometimes just, F-16s duking it out with J-10s is kind of all we want, and that adds its own kind of challenge to it, rather than all the Cobras and AOA moves and stuff. It's that stuff's fun, and it is definitely very fantasy flight, as I guess that's really the genre, because it is fantasy, because you got a bazillion missiles, and you don't have to worry about G's and all this other stuff, and anybody can fly any aircraft, or so you at least can fly whatever aircraft you want, which is not really. I guess if you're a mercenary, you could do what you want, but mastering an aircraft would not be as simple as just, oh, this one, the controls are the exact same as on the F-18 as the F-16, and the Su-57. They're all the same basically. You just you can do more with one or something. It's definitely fantasy. But, we love it for that. I will say this game, they did the guns right. Some people might say the gun pods are overpowered. Maybe. But at the same time, it's, so what? I don't care. They're fun to use. They're not amazing against ground targets. They probably could be better against ground, and it just has to do with kind of not really getting the range, and they don't have enough splash damage, I think, as dumb as that sounds, even though they're really powerful against aircraft, and their hitbox is really nice and beefy. By the way, Ace Combat, that's how you get around simulating 2,000 rounds a minute or whatever it is. Basically the Vulcan guns are supposed to be firing out of the aircraft. If you have to slow it down so that you don't lag the game or cause a problem, then you just make the basically the hitbox of the bullet larger, and then that kind of substitutes for the saturation. Because in aluminum aircraft, getting hit by a burst of 20mm cannon fire, it's not going to be good for the aluminum aircraft, unlike in Ace Combat 7, where it just doesn't really... It barely does anything. You have to get pretty much at a really tight angle in order to and stay behind something for a really long time, or for that cannon to actually do anything. I've rationed my cannon ammo in this game. I have never once done that in Ace Combat 7. I think I ran out once just because during... No, it wasn't even the gun run, because I did that on normal or whatever, where you have unlimited gun, just so I wouldn't have to deal with it. But I don't think I've ever been in a situation in that where I was like, oh, I better, I only have a little bit of cannon left. And that's the other thing, is that I get that, in real life, the cannon is, you get, 2 seconds if you're lucky, depending on the aircraft. Some aircraft are better than others. You really don't get a lot of time on the gun. But you're also not supposed to hold it for 10 years. You're supposed to pretty much just get the meatball lined up and then pull the trigger in it. And, if the thing is in there, you're going to get, you're going to get a piece of it, and you're going to at least knock him out of action. Probably destroy the aircraft. But in a game like this, where you have 100 air-to-air missiles, what's extra cannon? I am always torn on the whole ammunition versus damage. Like, I always kind of feel like you should just be able to, one shot in the tailpipe and knock an aircraft out of action. And I remember Ace Combat 0, you could do that even on the harder difficulties if you got the hit in the right spot, because it would do enough damage to the aircraft where it would start to retreat, rather than it strictly getting blown out of the sky and blowing up. Because that's I guess closer to how it is in real life, where you're not always going to shoot something down, but you will knock it out of action, or you will cause enough damage to it where the guy's going to have to limp home or bail at some point. You don't have to get the full destruction of the aircraft. And oh, here we go. I guess that was that. And this is me just being a dick to some guy in a yacht. They give you 100 points for blowing it up. I don't know why. It's clearly civilian, but the developers were like, whatever. You found it. If you don't get to blow it up, then what's the point of it being there? I guess that's the argument. And oh, he's just so sad. So yeah, that's Project Wingman. It's fun. It's good. I don't have any there's no like, oh, this is kind of Ace Combat, not quite. No, it's I would say it's every bit as good in its own way. And if you like Ace Combat, or even if you're not huge on it but you felt that there was something there, get this one. This one plays a lot more like the old Ace Combat games. The gameplay, particularly, I should say, the handling of the missiles and the aircraft, is a lot closer to Ace Combat 0, which is kind of the gold standard. There is no high G maneuvers. I will say this game, I wish they had implemented a similar system, maybe not as arcadey as Ace Combat 7 does it, but there are a few times when I felt that the lack of a basically high G maneuver drug out dogfights for way too long, particularly aircraft like the Su-37 that already take 3 missiles to hit, or just say to take down. And if you're in something like the F-14, it becomes very tedious to zip around and try to get on their tail. It's fine. It works, but if you'll just end up in kind of a perpetual cycle, and especially when it's just like, if you could just pull just a little higher and sacrifice your speed just a little bit to line up your nose, you'd be able to actually you'd be able to just end certain fights a lot sooner. And I think that would lend itself to overall enjoyability. I could see some people, particularly people who are not used to the flow of gameplay with this type of game, getting really frustrated by having the wrong aircraft and then getting stuck with another aircraft that's more maneuverable and just kind of going in circles forever, trying to get behind them to take a shot. It's not as bad as when it happens in Ace Combat, because the missiles guide properly, like they guided in Ace Combat 0. But Ace Combat, they supplement that with the high G maneuver. I think there should be a split. Maybe the high G maneuver shouldn't be as powerful or as potent as it is in Ace Combat 7, but just a little something extra, just to cut that a little harder, so that you can and not the AOA limiter. The AOA limiter is really funny and fun, but especially when you're dealing with ground targets, the flares are so much more useful, and it's just you'll get yourself in trouble if you have the AOA and not the flares. In terms of just sometimes there's just missiles you can't really get away from, and the flares are the only option. And the AOA limiter doesn't help you, and it's not helpful for aircraft that don't have it. As dumb as that sounds, although I wish every aircraft had access to it. So maybe some kind of different split where there's a high G maneuver and some way to do the AOA that's a little different. I definitely don't like the post-stall maneuvers in Ace Combat 7. I don't think I've ever used one in combat. In fact, I'm not even 100% sure how to initiate one. You get the stall, and then you tap air brake, and then it starts. There's like a swooshing sound, and then you can start kind of spinning around. It doesn't. To me, it doesn't add anything. Also, since I like to play in the cockpit, it doesn't. That's kind of not very useful. Maybe if you could do a Cobra, that would be kind of useful. You know, like the Maverick maneuver where you just slow down and then snap the nose back down, and then now you're on the target, which doesn't work in real life, but you know it's fantasy, so I can let some of that go. But that's all. It's a great game. If you don't already have it, pick it up. It's not that expensive. If you're basically you beat Ace Combat 7 and you really hate Ace Combat 7's multiplayer like I do, this is a pretty damn good follow up. And you're going to be sick of the flight game by the time you're done with flight games. By the time you're done with it, you're going to feel pretty satisfied. So that's all.